What I have discovered is the banks and the government have colluded to financially enslave the people of Canada. I will share with you 3 important points of reference, which will hopefully spark enough interest and concern for you to continue the research on your own and to engage your government to stop this criminal act against the people of Canada.
How is it that this 12-year-old girl gets it more than the average Canadian? Unbelievable. Now, I'm going to show more of that video later in this video, but first let's get into what is the government saying about taxation? Well, they're saying that it's about your fair share. Christopher Freeland saying we're asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share so that we can make the essential investments in our economic potential. Well, what is the fair share, and how is that actually working out? Are they actually going after the wealthiest Canadians, or are they actually going after the average person and calling it wealthy Canadians? We're going to get into this. Of course, Natalie on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it these days, says, what is your fair share of what someone else has earned? Great question. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. Now, yesterday we went into, well, what is our fair share? We were paying an exorbitant amount in income tax, provincial tax, land taxes. Now they're going to be taxing your home. We're going to get into that. But what are the other taxes we're paying? Crazy consumption taxes on some particular items. This came into question because, well, the LCBO in Ontario is striking. We've seen this in other provinces, but what are we paying for a Canadian bottle of whiskey? $32.15 in Ontario, but you can go all the way to the Isle of Japan and pay the equivalent of less than $12 for the same thing that's been shipped all the way across the planet. And taxes have been paid on that there. And some people were even reporting, because I put this out on Twitter. I said, I want to run a little experiment here. How much are you overpaying for this bottle of Canadian Club whiskey? What kind of prices are you paying in your area? And what are you seeing? I'd love to see what other people have said. And of course, people obliged. And they're crazy, crazy prices that are going up, especially when you find out what it actually costs for them to actually produce this. How much is the government actually getting a take on this? In fact, people showing, like, even when you go to the United States in Walmart, you can't even buy the smaller bottle that is available at the Canadian liquor stores. No. It's only the 1.5 liter bottle for only $20. Then it goes on to other products. Say you want a 24 pack of Wobbly Pops. Here's a generic brand of Wobbly Pops that you might see out there. $52.95. What are Americans paying for the same thing? Well, they can't even get the 24 pack, but it's 30 pack for $20. I digress. Where are we going with this? Okay, so Christopher Freeland said, since becoming finance minister in 2020, has grown Canada's debt by more than $400 billion with a B, with a billion dollars. Now she's calling for tax hikes because she says the debt she has created is an unfair burden on younger generations. So where are they going with this? Well, that's just a backdoor way of saying, hey, we're going to come after your homes that you purchased many, many years ago. Trudeau Hail Mary is coming in 2025, a provincial home equity surtax on homes valued over $1 million. But hey, ask yourself, where can you buy a standalone home these days for less than $1 million? Every home is $1 million. You can't get anything for less than $1 million. Even in the town that I live in, townhomes, attached townhomes, are more than $1 million. It's crazy. The numbers have already been drawn up by CMHC, background organizations, and this is a reality. Even Brian Lilley reporting on this. The idea of taxing your primary residence is one Trudeau can't give up. He's drawn to it like a moth to a flame.
The Trudeau government keeps looking for ways to tax your primary residence when you sell it. It's an idea that keeps burning them, but one they keep coming back to. In 2018, it was a policy proposal that they dropped before the 2019 election, but they've since been forced to defend this idea several times, and they keep funding studies on it, including studies by people like Paul Kershaw, an academic out of British Columbia who's guy behind the organization Generation Squeeze.
What a name for it. Generation Squeeze. Let's squeeze that generation as hard as we possibly can. How much blood can you get from that stone? Well, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Northern Perspective did a really good breakdown on what the Liberal perspective and how long they've been going after this and what exactly their plans are. It's not like they've dropped these plans. This is serious. They're looking at taxing your home, but they want to tax your home up into the point that you sell it, or if you sell it, and beyond in fact. But of course the jokes are out there. What is the Trudeau's actual housing, affordable housing plan for Canada? Well, it looks a lot like this. Here he is explaining it to some children in a classroom. It's unbelievable. But who's getting the fair share in this whole stake? In this whole shake, where are all these taxes going? Well, Franco Terrazzano from the Taxpayers Federation lays out this really good point. You can't say it better than this.
Welcome to Canada, folks, where you pay a federal interest or you pay a federal sales tax just to cover the interest charges on the Trudeau government credit card. But here's another element of this, right? Like the government is claiming that they want the so-called rich to pay more. Well, if you want the rich to pay more, how about you just make rich multinational corporations pay for their own factories, right? The tens of billions of dollars that the federal government has given to the boardrooms of Germany and Japan, right? The billions of dollars to Volkswagen, Stellantis, you got Northvolt, you got Honda. In fact, I believe it was 2022, the federal government spent like $11 billion on corporate welfare, which is more money than what they're going to be bringing in this year in the capital gains tax hike. Welcome.
Unbelievable. It's true, though. Why? Okay, they're trying to get them to pay their fair share. Why don't they just pay their fair share into the economy? Why don't they just pay for their own factories? Why is it that the middle class, through tax dollars with, taxes on consumption items, taxes on your income, taxes on your homes, taxes on everything, all of these taxes add up to the point where we're barely getting to keep any of our income at the end of the day, and then it's just handed over to these wealthy corporations. But not just the wealthy corporations, it's handed over to banks. And this 12-year-old girl breaks this down so beautifully, so eloquently.
Have you ever wondered why Canada is in debt? Have you ever wondered why the government forces Canadians to pay so many taxes? Have you ever wondered why the bankers from the largest private banks are becoming wealthier and the rest of us are not? Have you ever wondered why the gross national debt is over $800 billion? Or why we are spending $160 million a day on the interest of the national debt? That's $60 billion a year. Have you ever wondered who receives the $60 billion? What I have discovered is the banks and the government have colluded to financially enslave the people of Canada. I will share with you 3 important points of reference, which will hopefully spark enough interest and concern for you to continue the research on your own and to engage your government to stop this criminal act against the people of Canada. First, we will briefly examine the Bank of Canada. Second, we will see how our banking system works today. And lastly, I will offer a viable solution that we can petition our government to implement. A very little known figure in Canadian history is J.L. Gradon McGeer. He was a lawyer, member of Parliament, and mayor of Vancouver. His contribution to Canada is probably the greatest in our history. He championed the creation of the National Bank of Canada, whose sole purpose is to create and manage Canada's money. It was formed on July 3, 1934, and owned by all Canadians. Until the 1970s, because of the Bank of Canada, Canada's national debt was held at a constant, manageable level, until the government decided to implement what we now have as our modern-day banking system that is robbing the Canadian people. So how are they robbing us? Allow me to explain how our private banks and government work today. First, the Canadian government borrows money from the private banks. They then lend the debt-based money to Canada with compounded interest. The government then continues to increase taxation of Canadians year after year in order to pay back the interest on the exponentially growing national debt. What results is inflation, less real money for Canadians to spend into our economy, and the real money being used to pad the pockets of the banks. Also,
does that sound familiar at all? Does that sound familiar of how things have been going on today? Now, this video was taken 12 years ago by this 12-year-old girl. So she would be 24 years old today. Obviously, way ahead of her time. I'll leave a link in the description down below where you can check out the whole video in its entirety. But where is this taking us? Where is this going? With this type of, Hayek called it the road to serfdom. Great book, by the way. F.A. Hayek, go read that for yourself. But this is pretty much the path that we're on.
Lenin said that socialism was a transition phase between capitalism and communism. So you got capitalism empowers the individual. I point out there's two kinds of capitalism. There's this globalist, George Soros, that's bad. Wants a one world government. But the individual capitalism, where you get to earn a living and make stuff and sell it, that empowers the individual. So capitalism empowers the individual. Socialism is this transition phase to take it all away until finally the government owns it all and you own nothing.
Where have you heard that?
How is it that these people are embracing
Deconstruction. It's a sales technique. If I was a toothpaste salesman, the first thing I would do is say negative things about the toothpaste you're currently using. You're still using that old stuff? Don't you know it'll eat the enamel off your teeth? You're like, oh, really? You're repulsed by it. Now I have you into a neutral. You're open-minded. What are all the toothpaste out there? Then I give you my pitch for this tartar-controlled breast freshener stuff. So you separated people from their past, get them into a neutral where they don't remember where they came from, and then you brainwash them into the future you have planned for them.
Absolutely. And we can see this today with the priming that we have. We have all these industries that have been taken over by the government, insurance rackets. We have the BC ferries, the ferry service, boats, everything, tons of medical service, all of these things that have been taken over by the government. And anytime somebody says, you know what, we should take it back and we should have it in private hands, they use words like privatization, as if, and there's a negative connotation in that word, as if privatizing something, well, that's something that ought to be in the government's hands. Well, this isn't something that ought to be in the government's hands. There's all kinds of services that ought to be in the hands of private ownership. This is the whole idea of private enterprise. Anyway, I'd love for you to leave your comments in the comment section down below on all the things that we talked about today. What is your fair share? Hey, leave that one in the comments down below. What do you think your fair share of the national debt is? All this money that Trudeau and Christopher Freeland spent over the past several years on frivolous things, how much do you think you should be on the hook for, as opposed to possibly them themselves? Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.